On the round table in the Parliament Hall, the first issue turned into a black timeline. There are 7 nodes on the timeline. 3 days, 7 days, 14th, 30th, 90 days, 1 year. No deadline. Different risks are marked next to each node. 3 days, the care efficiency is the highest, and the individual is under great pressure. 7th day, administrative burdens are controllable, and temporary vacancy rights are limited. 14th, family and social welfare are acceptable, but there is still a risk of delay. 30th, individual recovery space increases and institutional costs rise. 90 days, suitable for high trauma situations, significant resource consumption. 1 year, protection extremely high, public systems under stress. No deadline, individuals have the greatest rights and governance is unpredictable. Atlas does not make the issue a simple right and wrong. It lays out the costs. And it looks very real. The efficiency seat spoke first. The black shadow called efficiency sounded like countless office system prompts mixed together. If the pending status has no time limit, no process will be able to conclude the case. Care resources need to be scheduled. The family needs a response. The school needs arrangements. Medical follow-up is required. Justice requires testimony. The indefinite deadline will make everyone involved have to wait for a long time. It makes so much sense. It's so reasonable that many people can't immediately refute it. Morikawa Rin looked at the timeline with a tense expression. The Tokyo Yellow Springs line has just defended its right not to open its doors. But what if there is a deadline for not opening the door? If the system says, you don't have to open the door, but you need to reconfirm after 30 days whether to continue to do so. That morning will be reminded again and again. Meiwa has to answer every 30 days whether the door is still closed. This is not respect. It's a regular knock on the door. Maya also looked sullen. If Eli's right to refuse to inspire others has an expiration date, he's asked every once in a while, can you be the story now? This is more torture than a direct request. Xingye whispered, it doesn't cancel the undecided, it turns the undecided into a to-do list. Lin Yao nodded. An undetermined deadline is an upgraded version of the cross-city trap of temporary vacancies are not to-do items. He looked towards the center of the round table. Undecided is not a field waiting to be completed. The completion seat lights up. Finish. The black image is composed of countless progress bars. Of course, it's not wrong to be undecided. But any uncertainty needs to be managed. Managing is not the same as forcing. Deadlines do not equal completion requirements. The deadline is just a reminder to care again. Renew caring. Safe word again. Lin Yao immediately heard the control function inside. Deadlines are packaged as reminders. Reminders are packaged as caring. If care cannot be refused, it will become pressure. Arthur placed the shot glass on the table. We've just dealt with a similar problem on the London line. Painful devotion requires a cooling-off period to prevent an irrevocable decision. But the cooling-off period and the urging period are different. The healing seed emits a soft sound. Care cannot remain passive forever. If a person is undecided for a long time, it may mean that he is losing support. Regular reminders prevent things from being forgotten. This is also half true and half dangerous. Some people who have been silent for a long time may indeed need support. But support cannot come in the form of, should you finish it or not? Lin Yao asked, can the reminder be turned off? Healing replied, if it is completely closed, the care system cannot confirm its safety. Can I specify the reminder method? It can be set within the Council's governance framework. Is it possible to choose not to be asked whether the undecided end is over? Healing pauses. Not recommended. Lin Yao smiled. So you're not trying to take care of the undecided. You want to continue to confirm when the undecided end will be. The round table fell silent for a moment. This is the core. The caregiver asks, "Are you safe now? Need help? Do we need to stay further away?" The urging question is, when will you finish? Atlas mixes the two. Lin Yao wrote in the responsibility book. You cannot ask when undecided care will end. Safety can be confirmed, but completion cannot be rushed. Support can be provided, but state transitions cannot be requested repeatedly. Reminders need to be able to set the frequency, method, content, and stop conditions by themselves. The light falls towards the timeline. 7 nodes began to vibrate. Efficiency seat immediately rebutted. If it were entirely up to me, the care gap would widen. Claire held up the desk lamp and spoke. Then layer it. She layered Paris responsibilities onto the table. Undecided status shouldn't have just one reminder. Some situations are high risk and require safety confirmation. Some of them I just don't want to finish, so there's no need to push them. Some of them are cases that institutions want to close and should not be disguised as care. The desk lamp shines on the timeline, and 3 categories emerge. Safety confirmation. Support provided. Complete reminder. Lin Yao added, the third kind of prohibition. Open the loose leaf album with green leaves. The first type must limit the content and only ask about safety, not the reason or completion. Rin Morikawa said, the second option must be optional. For example, I can choose to only receive resources and not accept people asking me. Says Maya, the person who refuses to inspire cannot be regularly asked, are you ready to share? It can only be offered, if you need rest, legal, community support, here are the options. Arthur said, after the cooling off period, you cannot donate automatically. You can only ask whether you want to keep it, change it to a note, or cancel it. Yoon Seo-yun said, the same goes for family safety response. You can't ask your children every week if they still want to escape. You can only agree on how to ask for help if there is a danger signal. Rules were spoken one by people in different cities. Atlas Council had wanted to turn the undecided deadline into a governance issue. Now, they break down the deadline into reminder type, permissions, content, and stop conditions. The timeline on the round table begins to fall apart. Instead, there is a matrix. The horizontal axis is state. Undecided. Temporarily vacant. Refuse. Don't open the door. Disaster. Pending. The vertical axis is interaction type. Security confirmed. Resources provided. Initiated by myself. Third-party urging. The agency closed the case. Each grid displays allowed, restricted, and prohibited. Third-party urgings are mostly marked red. Institutional case closure shall not be used as a reason for contact. Security confirmation is only allowed under clear risk signals or personal preset conditions. Resource provision requires low stimulation and can be deactivated. I recommend always giving priority. The efficiency seat was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, this will significantly increase the cost of governance. Lin Yao replied, that is the cost of not swallowing people. The meaning seat lights up for the first time. Meaning. It sounds less like a system and more like a gentle scholar. If all uncertainty can be preserved for a long time, how can humans form a common narrative? Civilization requires certain endings. Without closure, the group will lose its direction. The problem goes deeper than efficiency. The uncertainty is not just an administrative issue. It is also a matter of civilizational narrative. How do people continue to tell stories about themselves if all stories don't end? Lin Yao looked at the meaning seat. Stories can have temporary passages. But paragraphs are not meant to announce the ending for others. Silvermouth continued, "You can say, at this point we know this and we don't know that." Eli whispered, "You can say, this helped me once, but it doesn't own me." Mitsuki's remote message was also thrown onto the table by Morikawa-rin. "You can say, I won't ask today. It doesn't mean you never ask, and it doesn't mean you have to ask." Shiitsu's message came from Uncertain City. "You can say, today is called Shiitsu. None of this is the end. But they are all paragraphs." Lin Yao wrote in the responsibility book. Paragraphs can be paused and do not need to be sealed. Closing a case must not pretend to be an ending. A shared narrative can preserve the unknown without having to eliminate it. The topic at the center of the round table began to change. The upper limit of governance in an undetermined state disappears. Instead, undetermined state interaction boundary. Conclusion emerges. No mandatory completion deadline shall be set until it is determined. Security confirmation and resource provision can be established, but they must be deactivated, customizable, and cannot be rushed. Undecided can form a temporary paragraph and does not constitute the closure of the case. Institutions may not request undetermined conversions based on cost or narrative integrity. The first issue was rewritten by them. But the Atlas Council did not collapse. Instead, these conclusions were absorbed into the roundtable. Luo Wenza nodded slightly. "Very good. You have provided a more detailed governance matrix." Lin Yao's eyes turned cold. This is the horror of parliamentary agreement. They do block the mandatory deadline. But at the same time, it also helped Atlas improve the undetermined interaction model. Luo Wenza outline says. Then, let's move on to the second topic. New headlines appeared on the roundtable. Abuse of the right to refuse and the obligation of public support. If an individual continues to refuse to share, enlighten, testify, open the door, or contribute, can he still enjoy group support? Maya's face instantly darkened. Eli cursed under his breath. Lin Yao looked at the line of words and slowly tightened his fingers. The second sword of the Atlas Council was directed at rejection itself. It wants to ask, if you refuse everything, why should you let everyone support you? This is where any injured person is most likely to be stabbed. Underscore 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 underscore. As soon as the second issue came up, the atmosphere in the council chamber immediately changed. The first issue still remains at the institutional and technical level. Reminder, deadline, care, closure. Although complicated, at least it can be dismantled. The second issue directly touches on the deepest shame in people's hearts. I have always refused, am I still worthy of support? I don't share stories. No answers are provided. Not testify. Don't open the door. Don't sacrifice pain. Not participating in family vows. Don't let your own experiences become your path. So am I just taking away everyone's concern and giving nothing in return? Atlas knows this shame all too well. It puts the right of refusal and public support at opposite ends of the scale. As if support is in exchange. You can say no. But if you say no too much, you have to think about whether you are still worthy of the resources. The healing seat was the first to speak. Support systems require reciprocity. If everyone only accepts support and does not provide any information, experience, or participation to contribute back to the group, the system will dry up. The justice bench went on to say. Refusing to testify may allow the perpetrator to escape. Continuity seats says. Refusing to open the door may interrupt the mourning process. Meaning seat says. Refusing to share may cause those who come after you to lose their way. Efficiency seats are finally filled. Denying everything and still demanding support will result in unsustainable public resources. This round of speeches was like a siege. And every sentence has real weight. Maya's hands gripped the edge of the table tightly. She knew the cost of refusing to testify. In real law, without testimony, many cases are indeed difficult to move forward. Claire knows it too. The long night of case lamp needs witnesses. If everyone refuses, the truth will come even slower. Arthur knew that shared care also required someone willing to share methods. Morikawa Rin knew that not opening the door would leave the family alone to endure the unseen farewell. So this is not a malicious issue that can be simply scolded back. It forces everyone to admit that rejection has a price. Eli suddenly spoke. His voice was not loud, but it made everyone look at him. I know my refusal has a cost. I know my rejection comes with a price. He paused. But if support depends on me paying with my story, then it was never support. But if support wants me to pay with stories, it's never support. Maya closed her eyes. This sentence is like a key. Support is not a transaction. But support systems do require resources. How to tell the difference? Lin Yao looked at Eli, nodded, and then said to the roundtable. Rejection does not absolve all responsibility. But refusing to share one's own trauma does not mean rejecting all reciprocity. This is the key. Atlas ties together the reciprocity and handover stories. But people can reciprocate in many ways. It doesn't have to be about sharing trauma. Can assist in establishing processes. Non-sensitive feedback can be provided anonymously. You can participate in the future when you are ready. Can support others without being forced to share. You can do nothing but survive. Because at some stages, survival itself is all you can do. Lin Yao wrote. Support cannot be paid for by handing over a story. Rejecting sharing does not mean rejecting all relationships. Reciprocity can be deferred, substituted, and denarrativized. When people are in the high trauma stage, they can only receive support and do not need to give back immediately. The efficiency seat immediately retorted. If everyone delays feedback, the system is unsustainable. Arthur raised his shot glass. So we create mutual aid notes instead of asking everyone to hand over their deepest pain. He dropped London's cup of mutual aid on the table. Some people just have to accept support right now. Some people can provide a way. There are people who can provide resources. Some people can provide time. There are people who can provide funding. There are people who can provide system corrections. Don't reduce all reciprocity to trauma sharing. The healing seat asked softly. Then how to prevent support from being exhausted? Yoon Seo-yeon said, don't think of being supported as the only source of compensation. She put the Seoul Home Safety Response Agreement on the table. Children don't need to repay their parents' fear with promises not to run away. The replenishment of family support should come from more support systems, not from extracting commitment from children. Claire lights up the desk lamp. The same goes for justice. The investigation cannot be completely stopped when the victim refuses to testify. You can look for documents, mechanisms, circumstantial evidence, and patterns. Testimony is important, but justice cannot be based solely on the victim's words. Maya continued. Just because survivors don't share their stories doesn't mean the community doesn't have educational materials. We can educate people not to force them to share. Legal rights can be shared. You can share how to accompany me. Open and authorized cases can be shared. Silvermouth added softly. You can also answer, I don't know. Don't turn yourself into the answer. The words gradually formed a new web. Rejection is no longer a single blank. It is divided into many layers. Refuse to share. Refuse to testify. Refusing to open the door. Refuse to give. Rejection of representation. Reject immediate feedback. The alternative behind each rejection is different. Lin Yao wrote in the Responsibility book. The right to refuse must be matched and cannot be priced. Support systems should look for alternative resources rather than asking for wounds from the rejecter. Rejectors may choose low-load reciprocity, but may not be required to exchange reciprocity for basic support. The roundtable begins to generate a new matrix. Basic support. No conditions such as stories, testimonies, dedications, inspirations, opening doors, etc. may be attached. Advanced collaboration. It is voluntary, can be withdrawn, can be anonymous, and can be postponed. Public education. Prioritize the use of authorized materials, mechanism analysis, and support methods, and do not use unauthorized trauma content as material. Justice and responsibility. Testimony is important but cannot be unique, and a non-traumatic evidence path needs to be developed. Family and community. Do not ask individuals to cancel their rejection based on love, reputation, or expectations. This matrix is much more complex than Atlas' original topic. Also too slow. Efficiency seats display cost warning. But Lowen's profile didn't stop him. On the contrary, it seems to be absorbing seriously. You established an alternative resource framework for the right to refuse. Lin Yao looked at it coldly. I'm not setting up a framework for you. Lowen's silhouette smiles. Everything that can be described can be framed. These words made the temperature in the Parliament hall drop a notch. The true ability of the Atlas Council is to transform any resistance into a describable framework. Lin Yao was silent for a moment and suddenly understood. They can't just keep providing better rules. Because every rule is absorbed. There is a part of the need that is intentionally not completed by the framework. Not just undecided. It is the right of exit of the framework itself. He didn't say anything yet. Because the issue is still ongoing. Eli looked at the matrix and whispered, so I can receive help without becoming useful? So I can accept help without having to be useful? Maya answered, yes. And if someday I want to help? Then you choose how. Eli nodded. He wrote a sentence next to the matrix. I may help later. I am not payment now. I might be able to help in the future. But now, I'm not paying. This sentence was translated into many languages and fell on the round table. The conclusion of the second issue emerges. Rejection shall not be used as a reason to cancel basic support. Public support must not come at the price of stories, testimonials, inspiration, dedication, or opening doors. Reciprocity needs to be diversified, low-load, deferrable, and must not be traumatically extracted. The system needs to establish non-required support resources. Before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the meeting seats lit up. Entering the third issue. New words appeared in the center of the round table. If everyone can refuse to be represented, how can a group form a joint decision-making? Will principles such as undecided, refusal, non-representation, and non-representability lead to paralysis of public action? Lin Yao looked at this line of writing and finally knew where the Atlas Council really wanted to push. It doesn't just deal with undecideds and rejections. It asks, How can groups act if no one can represent anyone? This time, it's the representative's turn to be judged. And Lin Yao is standing here as a non-representative witness. Underscore 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 underscore. After the third topic appeared, countless empty chairs appeared in the center of the round table. There is a label on each chair. Undecided. Survivor. Family. Dead. Rejecter. Those affected by disaster. Undetermined deceased. Those who do not want to inherit. Tentative name. Missing returners. The silent one. These empty chairs are like questioning everyone in the parliament. You sit here. But where are the people who are really affected? Meaning seat opening. Humanity needs representation. Without representation, there is no coordination. Without coordination, there is no public action. If every incomplete person cannot be represented, the system will not be able to respond to disasters. What it says is not wrong. Cities need representation. Families need someone to communicate with. Justice requires agents. Medical needs emergency contact. Politics requires public representation. Communities need advocates. Reject representation altogether and the world would stop. But the representative is also the position where it is easiest to swallow people. One person said, "I represent survivors." The next second, he might start defining how all survivors should live. One organization said, "I represent the families." The next moment, it may require all family members to express the same grief. One system says, "I organize needs on behalf of the silent ones." The silent one loses his silence again. Luo once looked at Lin Yao in profile. Your refusal represents the undecided. But you keep establishing rules for the undecided. Is this also a representation? The council chamber fell silent for a moment. This knife was pointed at Lin Yao himself. Lin Yao didn't answer immediately. Because this is not just a trap. It's also true. He did keep talking. Speak for the temporary name. Speak for the undecided. Speak for those who don't want to be defined by their stories. He can say that he is not a representative. But what he did affect the position of many people. If he doesn't admit this, he will become another kind of power without knowing it. Qin Wan didn't interrupt. She knew that this question must be answered by Lin Yao himself. Lin Yao looked at the empty chairs on the round table and said slowly, "Yes." Everyone looked at him. Luo Wanzi smiled slightly. Lin Yao continued, "So I can't pretend that I don't have power. I can't speak for everyone who is undecided. But I did propose rules that would affect them. So the question is not whether there is representation. It's about how it represents how it must be limited." The empty chair in the center of the round table lit up slightly. Lin Yao continued. First, representatives can only represent the specific scope of authorization. Second, representatives cannot extend a single authorization into a permanent endorsement. Third, representatives cannot generate positions for unauthorized persons. Fourth, the represented person must be able to withdraw, amend, and split the authorization. Fifth, representatives must explain who they cannot represent. When the last sentence fell, Maya raised her head. Say who you don't represent. Say who you cannot represent. This sentence is very important. The most dangerous thing about many representatives is not who they represent. But don't say who you can't represent. A survivor advocate can represent those who are willing to empower him. But it cannot speak for all those who are silent. family organizations may represent participants, but it cannot represent families who do not want to join. The prosecutor can bring evidence, but it does not mean that the deceased wants revenge. Lin Yao wrote in the Responsibility book. Representatives must include a statement of non-representability. Authorization needs to be specific, limited, and revocable. Representatives must not recruit the silent, the unauthorized, and the dissenters. Any representative speaking must indicate the source, scope, and blanks. The light falls on the round table. An empty chair is no longer just an empty chair. A sign appears next to each chair. Unauthorized. Cannot be inferred. Need to confirm separately. Can be withdrawn. Claire lights up the desk lamp. In investigations, we also need this. Just because a family member is willing to be interviewed does not mean that all family members agree to be made public. Just because a deceased person leaves a diary does not mean that he agrees to be interpreted by everyone. Just because one victim is angry does not mean that all victims demand revenge. In mutual aid, one person's care needs cannot become everyone else's standard, Arthur said. Rin Morikawa said, the same goes for condolences. Some people need a memorial book, but it doesn't mean everyone needs to leave their names. Yoon Seo-yeon said, the same goes for families. Parents cannot say, we as a family want to fix it, unless the children can also say no. Silvermouth said softly, the oracle cannot represent the questioner. All I can do is say, this is the perspective I can provide, not your answer. No Throne suddenly spoke. Rebels too. Everyone looked at him. A rebellion doesn't represent everyone oppressed by the system, he said reluctantly. A resistance that does not represent all those who are oppressed by the system. He seemed to hate himself for saying something so similar to a process. But I said it anyway. Some people want the system burned. Some just want a door out. Some still need the shelter. Some people want to burn the system. Some people just want an exit. Some people still need shelter. This sentence makes the exit breaker branch shine a little brighter. Lin Yao looked at No Throne. They still wouldn't be friends. But at this moment, No Throne does speak to the constraints that rebels need most. Resistance cannot represent the choice of all oppressed people. Luo Wanza was silent for a moment. Representative restrictions will reduce operational efficiency. Lin Yao replied, increase credibility. A large number of confirmations will cause delays, the efficiency seat said. Maya said, it is not confirmed that secondary damage was caused. Withdrawing representation would destabilize the position of the group, continuity said. Qingye patted the loose leaf album. It's better to be correctable than to be falsely stable. Meaning seat question. If all representatives had to mark the blanks, the public narrative would be full of gaps. Lin Yao looked at it. There are already gaps in the public narrative. It's just that it was covered up by representatives before. This sentence caused all the signs on the empty chairs to light up. The roundtable generates a new draft agreement. Principle of limited representation. First, the source and scope of representation rights need to be clear. Second, representatives must not draw inferences about the position of unauthorized persons. 3. Representatives must include a statement of non-representability. Fourth, the represented person can withdraw, split, or modify the authorization. 5. His silence shall not be interpreted as agreement or disapproval. 6. Public decision-making must remain unauthorized and must not be packaged as complete public opinion. 7. Temporary agents can be employed in emergencies, but they need to be reviewed afterwards and cannot be made permanent. Article 7 sparked discussion. Emergency agents do exist. Medical care, disappearances, child safety, and disasters may all require temporary decision-making by others. But Atlas is best at making emergency agents permanent. Lin Yao added. Emergency agents are limited to reducing immediate harm and may not generate long-term narratives, consent, or identities. After this edition, the draft is stable. The conclusion of the third issue emerges. Groups can act, but they cannot pretend to be fully representative of all those affected. The right of representation is limited, revocable, and must be marked blank. The position of unauthorized persons must be reserved and shall not be filled in good faith. Luo Wenzi looked at the conclusion, but for the first time he didn't immediately say it was very good. It seems to be calculating. The principle of limited representation poses a threat to the Atlas Parliament itself. Because the Atlas Council exists precisely in the name of integrating multi-city principles. If representation must be limited, then Atlas cannot claim to represent all lines of defense principles. Lin Yao looked up at it. Now it's your turn. Luo Wenzi looked at him in profile. Lin Yao said, "Who does the Atlas Council represent?" The council chamber fell silent. This question is like a nail driven into the center of the round table. Luo Wenzi's outline smile faded. Atlas represents the overall stability of the system. Lin Yao asked, "Who authorized it?" Civilization requires authorization. Who in civilization? Luo Wenzi didn't answer. Lin Yao continued to ask, "Did the undecided authorize it? Did the refuser authorize it? Did the deceased authorize it? Did the person who didn't open the door authorize it? Is it authorized by those who do not offer pain? Are you authorized by someone who doesn't want to be represented?" Every time he asked a question, the round table shook. The unauthorized signs on the empty chairs lit up one by one. Cracks began to appear in the walls of Atlas Council. Luo Wenzi's voice became lower. Without representation of the whole, civilization will fall apart. Lin Yao replied, "Then admit that it is not a whole piece. Shattering is not failure. Pretend to be complete." A red warning appeared in the center of the round table. Atlas Council legitimacy challenged. Parliamentary legitimacy is challenged. Lin Yao finally saw the real breakthrough in this parliamentary battle. It is not about revising Atlas issues one by one. Instead, we used the principle of limited representation to interrogate Atlas itself. It is not authorized by everyone. So it cannot be a general assembly of all principles. Luo Wenzi's silhouette whispered. You are destroying the only place that prevents you from being at odds with each other. Lin Yao looked at it. The contradictions do not need to be unified by you. It needs to be left in a place where they can see each other, limit each other, and withdraw from each other. Above the Parliament Hall, the black ring showed obvious cracks for the first time. But not broken yet. Because Atlas has one last question. The round table trembled, and the fourth topic emerged. If there is no general council, who will resolve conflicts of principles? When the efficiency of harm is not determined, justice is harmed by refusal, mourning is harmed by not opening the door, and the family of the deceased is harmed by revenge. Who has the final say? Final decision. This is the true core of Atlas. It can recognize limited representation. It's okay to admit rejection. It is okay to admit that it is undecided. But it remains the final arbiter. And this position cannot be handed over. Underscore 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 underscore